So everyone gets to that point when you're growing up that you move from clothing under names like Junior or Little Miss, and you start to get into the terrifying and really intimidating adult clothing sizes that all just basically might as well be a yoke around my neck that say my thighs don't fit into anything. And that moment for me was when I was in grade 4, or the first moment was when I was in grade 4, and I realized that I had now transitioned from children's sizes to a women's size 8 in shoes, which is really weird when you're 9 years old and you're wearing your mom's running shoes. And it was basically like my feet had seen that the rest of my body was growing up, and they had been like, you are not leaving us behind. I will show you up. And they were just growing outwards at an incredible rate, to a point where I was very concerned at some point that I would end up with this amazing 90-degree figure. But eventually they topped out at somewhere between a women's size 11 and size 12. Unfortunately, this happened right around the time that shoes started to seem kind of cool and awesome. And while the rest of my friends were tottering around in their first 2-inch heels or cute new sandals, I was living in my smaller hometown where the only options were to wear my brother's old skate shoes, because I don't cater to people who have pontoons for feet. And so for years, I just wore the same shitty skate shoes all the time and sort of like basked in my kind of like proto-riot girl sort of thing where I was like, I don't care, I look great how I am. You don't understand me, LiveJournal understands me. And I would cut my hair to stupid things and dye it pink, and screw you, parents, you can't tell me what to do. And so I would just sort of wear these shoes because on top of the fact that my feet were long, they were also wide enough to basically just be doormats attached to my ankles. And this went on for a while, and finally when I was 15, I was traveling through the US for about 2 months with my parents, and we ended up in Pennsylvania, and we stopped in King of Prussia, which, much like places like Dildo or Shitterton's, one of those places you stop entirely because it has an incredibly stupid name. You pose in front of the sign, you're like, look where I am. And if King of Prussia has two things, it has one, a really stupid name, and two, a really big mall. It's like giant. And so we went in there, and again, coming from a smaller hometown, it was like, you guys have more than 4 stores. This is awesome. Like, we were still catching up. I mean, like my hometown was still catching up with things like we were wearing like jelly shoes and stuff like that. I was like, holy shit, it's stuff from this year. So I'm walking around, and after having a lunch of like fried chicken, which to this day I still don't understand, I thought that was just chicken. I was wandering around, and I stumbled across a place that I'd only heard about in my little like proto-punk mind in dreams and whispers and blog posts. I found a hot topic. And for someone who can't sew and can't get, and this is before online shopping was a thing where you could just destroy your credit rating, it was like Mecca. Like, I was standing there and the fluorescent lights were beaming out, and there's like angels coming down, and they're like, consumerism's awesome. And I was like dancing through, like, looked like pile spikes and, like plaid pants, and it's amazing. And I stumble across this pair of Chuck Taylors, and I put them on, and I'm like, oh my God, these things fit, and it's amazing, and they're purple. They are bright purple. And I'm not talking about the kind of shoes where like they're just like purple canvas. I'm talking about they were bright purple rubberized canvas, and the rubber was purple, and the grommets were purple, and the laces were purple, and it dyed my feet purple, and then like I came home and like painted everything purple. It was maddening, but they were beautiful. And like to a 15-year-old kid who has like only heard of these things and like, like a couple of blog posts, I'm like, this is so cool. I can't wait to put this on MySpace, like that sort of thing. So I bought these shoes immediately, and I was so thrilled to finally have that moment where I had something that fit my feet, something that sort of fit my body, which at this point, again, 15, it's not a stage where you're feeling great about this thing. It's not really going well. There's just stuff shooting out of everything. And like while my feet had stopped growing, they weren't really participating with anything else. So it was a nice distraction for that moment. And putting them on, everyone has that thing where you find one article of clothing in your life where it's like, this is my power item. This is the thing where I feel great, where it's like you're He-Man or Wonder Woman or Murphy Brown or something. And you're like, shoulder pads are great. And you're storming through your office. And for me, these were those shoes. And I wore them everywhere. I mean, just like everywhere. It was to every single concert and to every single show and to doctor's appointments and, water skiing and things like that, blood donations. I was wearing these shoes because I felt great in them. And that's rare, I feel, for a 15-year-old. On top of the fact that my family, while we traveled a ton, none of us are really kitschy people. We never really brought back matching t-shirts or bags of sand or cocaine balloons. So we just sort of would usually buy some art and maybe a necklace or something and come back. And so this is one of the few things I came back from this 2-month trip with, was this pair of bright, bright purple Chucks. And for the next 11 years, I wore them everywhere. And I feel like there must be someone out here too who wears Chucks all the time, and they're just like, what kind of weird, creepy magic were these shoes made out of? And to that answer, I have no idea. I have never figured it out, but I wore them for 11 years. And I wore them on trips, and they traveled the world with me. And finally, I'm sitting around a couple months ago, and we finally made the decision to pack up and go to the UK, and I'm looking through my closet, and I'm trying to get rid of a few things, because much like any 25-year-old, I have just tons of stuff to an absurd amount, just lying around of moving from dorm to dorm, being I'll need this box at some point. And I find these shoes, and they're lying in the bottom of my closet, and I have brought them with me to every apartment I have lived in the past 7 years. And they're sitting at the bottom of my closet, and I can finally see how worn out and threadbare and stained and full of holes they are. And I look down at them, and I'm like, "You okay?" And it whimpers. And I was like, "I think it's time, girl." And after I'd sobered up, I went out, and I sort of had that moment that I feel like as a pet owner you have, except that it was much stupider because they're shoes. And I looked at them, and I sort of saw them as a sort of last point of both my high school career, of the years where I was traveling with my parents all the time, of the many years of sitting around wearing terrible bondage pants from Stitches, and all the bad decisions I made and good decisions I made when I was younger. And I finally realized I had to let these go, because at this point, while they still were sort of the living embodiment, or I guess technically not living, they actually, you know what? They smelled bad enough, they might have been living. The embodiment of all those years, they were at this point just an object, so it's time to let them go. So like any good owner, I took some photos, I wrote an obituary, I put it on Instagram with a couple sad faces. I wrapped them in some fabric, and I gingerly put them in the garbage can and wished them goodbye. Because they'd really been with me through all of these things, and I outlasted jobs and apartments and partners and all those other things that most things don't tend to outlast, or articles of clothing shouldn't. But it was in that moment that I sort of got to finally sort of put to rest those days where I had really awesome shoes and a really bad haircut and really, really bad bondage pants. Thank you.